far beyond the familiar stars of the Galactic Coalition's mapped space, in a sector rarely visited or studied. A sudden burst of activity shook the usually calm and methodical operations center aboard the Coalition's flagship, the EOS Sentinel. It began as a flicker on the deep space sensors, almost too faint to notice. But the monitoring officers quickly realized this was no ordinary signal. It was a distress call, and not one that had come through in years, for space had grown peaceful after centuries of uneasy truces and diplomatic efforts among the many species of the Coalition. The message itself was brief, but every word was heavy with urgency and dread. The recorded transmission simply said, "The Deathworlder fleet is mobilizing. They are coming." No further explanation followed, and the static that followed the message seemed almost to amplify the looming sense of menace. The room fell silent as the implications sank in, and every face present turned grave. To those who understood the weight of these words, it was as if the calm before a storm had suddenly cracked, and a dark shadow stretched across the horizon of known space. The Deathworlders were a name spoken quietly, even in Coalition councils, often with a mix of fear and grudging respect. They were a species unlike any other, born and bred on planets so hostile that most life could not survive, even a moment. Their homeworlds, called Deathworlds for their harsh environments, filled with toxic atmospheres, brutal predators, and violent weather, had forged a people who were among the toughest and most dangerous in the galaxy. These were warriors, who had mastered survival in ways that other species could hardly comprehend. Their ships were not only built to fight, they were designed to endure the worst conditions space could throw at them. They did not seek peaceful alliances. They were known for their aggressive expansion, their unforgiving nature, and their reputation for leaving entire star systems barren in their wake. For decades, they had remained distant, a looming threat on the edges of mapped space, but rarely seen moving en masse. Their movements were slow, deliberate, and always to their advantage. Now, the news that their fleet was on the move sent shockwaves throughout the Coalition's leadership. Analysts began poring over the scant data, trying to piece together what could have prompted such a mobilization. Had the Deathworlders found new worlds to conquer? Were they fleeing some unknown danger? Or was this the beginning of a brutal campaign against the Coalition itself? The lack of information only deepened the mystery and heightened the fear. At Coalition headquarters on the capital world of Solaria Prime, emergency meetings were called. Delegates from every member species gathered, their usual polite debates replaced by urgent discussions and heated arguments. Some argued for caution, hoping this might be a false alarm or a test of the Coalition's resolve. Others urged immediate military preparedness, fearing that any delay could prove disastrous. Among the humans, who had become an influential part of the Coalition through their remarkable adaptability and rapid technological advancement, the reaction was swift and resolute. Humanity had grown used to being underestimated by many alien species, but now was the time to show that Earth's sons and daughters could stand firm in the face of the galaxy's most dangerous threats. Captain Mira Lawson, a veteran of many skirmishes and diplomatic crises, was called from a routine patrol mission to take part in the strategic planning. Known for her quick thinking and unconventional tactics, she was tasked with leading a reconnaissance mission to gather more intelligence on the Deathworlder fleet's movements. The humans understood that brute force alone would not be enough. They needed to understand their enemy, to find their weaknesses, and to prepare for a confrontation unlike any before. As the Coalition prepared for what might come, the atmosphere among ordinary citizens across member worlds was one of tense anticipation. News feeds buzzed with speculation. Old stories of Deathworlder battles were retold with renewed vigor, and families clung to hope that the Coalition's combined strength would hold. For the scientists and engineers, the warning meant long nights, spent analyzing weapons systems, improving defenses, and developing new technologies that might give them an edge. For the diplomats, it meant frantic efforts to keep uneasy alliances intact and to reach out to neutral or even hostile species who might be persuaded to join the Coalition's cause. Every sector of Coalition society felt the ripple of this single chilling message. Yet even with all the preparation, the question remained, why now? What had caused the Deathworlders to break their long-standing pattern of isolation and cautious expansion. Some theorized that the Deathworlders were reacting to an internal threat, perhaps a rebellion or resource shortage that forced them to move swiftly. Others whispered fears of a new power rising beyond the edge of known space, something so dangerous that it threatened even the fearsome Deathworlders themselves. No one had the answer, and that uncertainty gnawed at the minds of all who waited. Captain Lawson, aboard her flagship Valiant Horizon, stared out at the endless stars, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She knew that the coming days would test everything she and her crew had learned. The challenge was not just to survive the Deathworlders' arrival, but to find a way to turn this threat into an opportunity for unity, for growth, and for proving that humanity was not just a footnote in galactic history, but a force to be reckoned with. As the Valiant Horizon prepared to jump to the coordinates given by the SOS, a cold voice in the back of her mind warned that this was only the beginning. The Deathworlder fleet was on the move, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The news of the Deathworlder fleet's movement rippled through the Galactic Coalition like a sudden, fierce storm, stirring anxiety and fear among the member worlds. Panic was beginning to spread, with some leaders advocating for retreat and defense, hoping to hold their borders until more information came in. But Earth's leaders, well aware of humanity's unique strengths, chose a different path, one that surprised many within the coalition. Instead of pulling back and waiting for the threat to grow nearer, they decided to take the fight directly to the enemy. It was a gamble that could either save billions or risk everything. The decision was made swiftly but deliberately. Earth would lead a task force to intercept the Deathworlder fleet far from Coalition space, in a remote star system where the terrain and conditions might favor those willing to fight with wit and courage rather than overwhelming force alone. Humanity's reputation for adaptability and rapid innovation was their greatest asset, and the leaders believed it was time to prove it. Captain Mira Lawson, already known across several star systems for her fearless leadership and tactical brilliance, was chosen to command this crucial mission. Her record was impressive. She had a knack for turning unlikely situations into victories, often using unconventional strategies that confounded more traditional military minds. Though her fleet was smaller and less heavily armed than the massive Deathworlder force they faced, the Coalition placed its faith in her and the spirit of her crew. As she prepared her ships and briefed her officers, Lawson made it clear that this mission would demand more than courage. It would require every ounce of human creativity and tenacity. The Deathworlders were experts in harsh environments, but humans had a history of overcoming impossible odds by thinking differently. They had thrived on worlds that tested their limits, and now, in the cold depths of space, they would do so again. The crew aboard the Valiant Horizon shared a mixture of determination and quiet tension as they trained and strategized for the encounter ahead. Engineers worked tirelessly to modify ships, creating adaptive technologies designed to exploit any environmental advantages they could find in the chosen battleground. Pilots ran simulations of potential battle scenarios, practicing maneuvers that relied on speed, unpredictability, and precise coordination. Every member of the task force understood the stakes. They were not just fighting for their own survival, but for the future of the Coalition and possibly the entire galaxy. The Deathworlders' reputation for brutality was well earned. They showed no mercy and had defeated far larger fleets in the past by using their relentless tenacity and deep knowledge of survival tactics. But humanity's strengths were equally formidable. Unlike many species that relied on rigid command, structures, and predictable strategies, humans thrived on improvisation, resilience, and a willingness to push beyond known limits. Captain Lawson's plan hinged on these qualities. She intended to use the natural features of the chosen star system, a place filled with unstable asteroid fields, erratic gravity wells, and dangerous radiation bursts, to level the playing field. The Deathworlders, for all their power, were not known for their flexibility outside of their harsh home planets. They might have the numbers, but humans had the advantage of innovation and daring. As the day of departure approached, tension tightened like a wire among the fleet's personnel. Rumors and speculation ran rampant in the mess halls and on the communication channels. Some doubted humanity's bold approach, questioning whether it was wise to face such a fearsome enemy head-on. Others felt a surge of pride and hope, believing that this was humanity's moment to shine, to show that they could not only survive but lead in the darkest times. The pressure rested heavily on Captain Lawson's shoulders, but she embraced it with calm focus. In private moments, she reviewed every detail of the plan, considering possible Deathworlder tactics and preparing countermeasures. She encouraged her crew to think beyond conventional limits, reminding them that victory would come from their ability to adapt, to find unexpected solutions, and to stand united against a common threat. The departure was quiet, but charged with emotion. Ships slipped through the blackness of space, moving toward the coordinates where the Deathworlder fleet had last been detected. Communications were tight and encrypted. No one wanted the enemy to know of their approach until it was too late. As the Valiant Horizon and its accompanying vessels entered the unfamiliar system, the crew's nerves were stretched thin. The environment was as treacherous as they had hoped, with swirling debris and energy fields that threatened navigation and weapon systems alike. But these hazards were part of Lawson's strategy, to force the Deathworlders into close, chaotic combat where human ingenuity could turn the tide. Scouts and probes were sent ahead, searching for signs of the enemy fleet. Every piece of data was analyzed with urgency, looking for weaknesses or changes in formation. Despite the tension, moments of quiet camaraderie helped the crew stay grounded. Stories were shared, old songs hummed in the mess, and simple jokes passed between shifts, reminders of what they fought to protect. The first signs of the Deathworlders came as distant flashes on the sensors, large angular ships moving with purpose through the dangerous star system. Their presence was overwhelming, a stark reminder of the size and power they wielded. Yet instead of fear, the humans felt a growing resolve. This was their chance. Captain Lawson stood on the bridge, her eyes steady and voice calm as she gave the order to engage stealth systems and prepare for the first encounter. She knew that this battle would not be won by brute strength alone. It would require every human strength, courage, quick thinking, and an unbreakable will to survive and succeed. The gamble was set in motion. As the Deathworlder fleet advanced, deeper into the hazardous system, the stage was set for a clash that would test humanity's limits and prove whether their unique qualities could truly turn the tide in a galaxy shadowed by fear. The remote star system chosen for the confrontation was unlike any battlefield the Galactic Coalition had ever seen, filled with unstable space phenomena that twisted and warped the very fabric of the void, creating hazards that could damage even the most advanced ships. This chaotic environment offered humanity a sliver of hope, a chance to balance the overwhelming numerical superiority of the Deathworlder fleet. As the two forces closed in on one another, tension crackled across the communication channels, every eye fixed on the flickering readouts of approaching vessels. The Deathworlders came in waves, their ships vast and heavily armored, moving with deadly purpose, their advance relentless and precise. Their reputation for brute force was evident in the raw power of their assault, but what few expected was the fierce determination and cunning that radiated from the human fleet under Captain Mira Lawson's command. Lawson had spent countless hours preparing her crew for this moment, drilling them not just in combat but in improvisation, turning every environmental hazard into a potential weapon. As the battle erupted, chaos reigned in the swirling asteroid belts and volatile radiation pockets that cut through the star system. Human pilots weaved through narrow passages where the Deathworlders struggled to maintain formation, exploiting the sharp gravity wells and debris fields to launch surprise attacks. Missiles fired by the Deathworlders were intercepted or dodged by swift maneuvers, while human ships adapted their tactics mid-fight, using energy bursts and holographic decoys to confuse the enemy sensors. The clash was brutal and intense. The Deathworlders' raw strength was matched by the human speed, agility, and relentless creativity. Despite the uneven numbers, the human fleet held their ground, turning the battlefield's dangers to their advantage. Captain Lawson coordinated her fleet like a conductor leading a complex symphony, her calm voice cutting through the tension as she ordered daring flanking maneuvers and precise strikes against key enemy vessels. Her crew trusted her without question, knowing that their survival depended on this unity and quick thinking. Amidst the battle, the human command intercepted unusual communications from the Deathworlder leadership, coded messages that spoke not of conquest or destruction, but of something deeper and darker, a looming threat that went beyond any known rivalry. These cryptic hints suggested that the Deathworlders were moving not simply to expand territory, but to prepare for a danger that could endanger all life within the coalition. This revelation added a new layer of urgency and mystery to the conflict, casting the fierce battle in an unexpected light. The humans now faced a paradox. Their enemy's aggression was fueled by fear and desperation, and the true threat might be something no one had yet seen or understood. As the fight raged on, skirmishes erupted across the star system, with both sides suffering losses, but neither willing to retreat. The human crews demonstrated remarkable resilience, repairing damage swiftly and adapting to shifting conditions. Their ingenuity shone brightest when facing the unpredictable dangers of the environment. When a sudden solar flare threatened to fry electronics, or when a rogue asteroid broke loose from a belt, threatening to collide with multiple ships, human pilots reacted instantly to minimize damage and turn hazards against the enemy. The Deathworlders, though formidable and relentless, found themselves increasingly frustrated by these unexpected tactics, their usual dominance challenged by a foe who refused to be pinned down. As the sun set behind distant stars, casting long shadows over the battered fleets, Captain Lawson made a critical decision to press forward with a bold strategy. Rather than waiting for reinforcements or further orders, she ordered a concentrated strike at the heart of the Deathworlder formation, targeting their command ships in an attempt to disrupt their control and communication. This daring move required absolute precision and trust among her pilots, and for a moment, the outcome hung in the balance. The assault was swift and fierce, pushing human skills and technology to their limits. Explosions lit up the void as the Deathworlder flagship sustained heavy damage, forcing a temporary withdrawal of some enemy forces. The human fleet seized the opportunity, pressing their advantage with unyielding determination. Yet, even in victory, the shadow of the unknown threat loomed large. The intercepted messages hinted at something ancient and powerful awakening beyond the edges of known space, something that could render all their struggles meaningless if left unchecked. Captain Lawson understood that this battle was only the beginning, that survival required not just strength or strategy, but uncovering the truth behind the Deathworlders' sudden mobilization. As the fleets regrouped and tended to their wounded, the galaxy held its breath, waiting for the next move in a war that promised to change everything. The frontier had been breached, and with it, a new chapter in humanity's story had begun, one where courage, innovation, and hope would be tested against the darkest unknowns of the cosmos. The aftermath of the fierce battle left both fleets weary and battered, their ships scarred from the brutal encounter in the unstable star system. Amid the wreckage and silence, a beacon of hope appeared when human forces managed to capture a damaged Deathworlder scout ship drifting near the edge of the battlefield. The vessel was unlike any the humans had seen before, its design brutal and efficient, reflecting the harsh worlds its crew had endured. Boarding teams quickly secured the ship, cautious yet eager to discover any information that might explain the strange behavior of their formidable enemy. Inside the dimly lit corridors, the human technicians and analysts worked tirelessly, scanning data logs and decrypting messages that revealed far more than anyone could have anticipated. The captured files exposed a startling truth. The Deathworlders were not simply advancing to wage war or conquer new territory. They were fleeing from a threat so massive and ancient that it dwarfed all previous conflicts. The data spoke of a cosmic phenomenon, a dark, living force that had begun to awaken from the farthest reaches of the void, consuming entire star systems and erasing them from existence. This ancient menace, older than the oldest civilizations known, moved relentlessly through the galaxy, leaving nothing but silence and destruction in its wake. The Deathworlders' sudden mobilization was a desperate attempt to escape the path of this devouring force, their aggression fueled by fear and the urgent need to find safety within the Coalition's borders. This revelation shattered the long-standing image of the Deathworlders as merciless invaders, casting their actions in a new light. No longer was the enemy simply a brutal conqueror. They were survivors facing annihilation alongside humanity and every other species in the galaxy. Captain Mira Lawson received the intelligence with a mixture of relief and concern. The possibility of an alliance between old enemies was unprecedented and fraught with risk. The Coalition had long viewed the Deathworlders as a dangerous and unpredictable foe, and convincing both sides to work together against a common threat would require delicate diplomacy and trust that had never before existed. Lawson knew that hesitation or mistrust could doom not only their chances of survival, but the future of all life in the galaxy. She immediately set to work, arranging communication channels and preparing to address leaders from every Coalition member and representatives of the Deathworlder Command. The conversations were tense and cautious. Old wounds and suspicions surfaced, making every discussion a challenge. The Deathworlders were wary of the Coalition's intentions, while many Coalition members feared betrayal or ulterior motives. Yet, as Lawson presented the undeniable evidence from the captured ship, the reality of the ancient threat became impossible to ignore. The data included detailed star maps showing the relentless advance of the consuming force, reports of entire planets wiped from existence, and even recordings of dying worlds' last messages. The weight of these truths pressed heavily on all present. Slowly, a fragile agreement began to take shape, one that required sacrifice and trust from all sides. The Deathworlders would cease their attacks and join forces with the Coalition to share resources, knowledge, and military strength. Humanity, with its proven adaptability and tactical skill, would lead combined task forces to develop new strategies to confront the cosmic menace. The next phase of the conflict was no longer just about survival from each other, but survival from something that threatened everything they had built and cherished. Captain Lawson found herself in the center of this fragile coalition, tasked with balancing the competing interests and fears of alien species who had once seen each other only as enemies. Her leadership skills were tested not just on the battlefield, but in the diplomatic arena, where patience and empathy became as crucial as any weapon. She worked to foster mutual respect, highlighting the shared stakes and the undeniable truth that their survival depended on unity. At the same time, scientists and engineers from across the Coalition and the Deathworlders collaborated to study the ancient phenomenon. They pooled their knowledge, searching for weaknesses or patterns that might be exploited. The challenge was immense. This force was unlike any known natural disaster or enemy, seemingly alive and intelligent in its relentless consumption of matter and energy. As preparations for a joint defense began, the galaxy watched with bated breath. The uneasy alliance between former foes was a beacon of hope, but also a reminder of how dire the situation truly was. Captain Lawson and her crew faced the daunting task of preparing for a war, not just against a physical enemy, but against an unknown cosmic force that could erase all existence. Every plan, every decision, was made with the awareness that failure was not an option. The secrets unearthed in that captured scout ship changed everything, turning enemies into allies, fear into determination, and despair into a cautious hope. The battle for the galaxy's future had only just begun, and humanity stood ready to lead in the darkest hour. The galaxy stood at the brink of annihilation as the ancient cosmic menace advanced with unstoppable force, swallowing entire star systems in its path and casting a dark shadow over every world within reach. Time was running out, and the fragile alliance between humanity and the Deathworlders had to move quickly from uneasy cooperation to coordinated action if they hoped to survive. Captain Mira Lawson, now a symbol of unity and resilience, led a combined fleet that represented the best of both species, human ingenuity and the Deathworlders' hard-earned survival instincts. The battle that unfolded tested every strength humanity had honed over centuries. Their resilience in the face of overwhelming odds, their creativity to devise new weapons and tactics on the fly, and above all, their unyielding spirit that refused to surrender even when the void seemed endless and merciless. The fleets moved together through the vast expanse, navigating deadly cosmic storms, collapsing stars, and swirling clouds of cosmic dust that threatened to blind their sensors and disable their ships. Each engagement was fierce and brutal, pushing crews to the limits of endurance. Yet what set this battle apart was not just the scale or danger, but the transformation taking place within the hearts and minds of former enemies. The Deathworlders, once feared for their ruthlessness, began to reveal depths of loyalty, courage, and sacrifice that surprised even their most skeptical allies. Humans learned from their hardened tactics and relentless focus on survival, while the Deathworlders embraced human creativity and adaptability, finding new ways to fight and live together. Communication barriers were overcome as both sides developed trust through shared hardship and common purpose. Captain Lawson's leadership became a beacon of hope, inspiring her crews to push past fear and exhaustion. She fostered cooperation between scientists, engineers, and commanders, encouraging innovation that combined technology and knowledge from every corner of the Alliance. This collaboration led to the development of new defensive shields, energy weapons capable of piercing the cosmic menace's almost impervious outer layers, and advanced navigation systems designed to outmaneuver the force's deadly tendrils that reached through space like ghostly arms. Battles were fought not just in the open void, but within pockets of unstable space where the cosmic threat itself seemed weakest. Here, the Allied fleet staged daring strikes, using environmental hazards as weapons and outsmarting the enemy's relentless advance. The tension was unrelenting. Each victory was hard-won and temporary, but the combined forces refused to yield. As the war dragged on, stories of heroism spread throughout the Alliance. Pilots who saved entire squads with split-second decisions, engineers who worked through exhaustion to repair critical systems, and medics who refused to leave wounded behind became legends that bound the coalition together. The battle was as much about spirit as technology, and humanity's ability to inspire unity among disparate species proved crucial. In the final, decisive encounter, the fleet faced the heart of the cosmic menace, a swirling mass of energy and destruction, vast beyond comprehension, threatening to consume everything in its path. The coordinated assault was a masterpiece of strategy and courage. Human ingenuity found ways to exploit fleeting weaknesses, while Deathworlder endurance and ferocity kept the enemy off balance. Captain Lawson led the charge personally aboard the Valiant Horizon, directing the fleet with a steady hand as explosions lit the darkness and ships danced between life and death. Against all odds, the Alliance struck a blow that began to turn the tide, fragmenting the cosmic force and forcing it into retreat. The victory was not total, and the galaxy bore the scars of the conflict, but it marked a turning point. A new dawn where hope was rekindled. In the quiet moments after battle, as the Allied fleet regrouped and repaired, Captain Lawson reflected on the journey. Humanity had proven itself not only as fierce warriors, but as unifiers capable of forging peace and trust in the most desperate times. Their willingness to face the unknown with courage and creativity had saved countless lives and earned them respect across the stars. The Deathworlders, once seen only as enemies, had become brothers in arms, united by shared sacrifice and a common dream of survival. As the fleets returned to Coalition space, the galaxy began to heal. Old rivalries softened, replaced by a growing understanding that only by embracing diversity and working together could they face the challenges yet to come. Humanity stood proud, no longer just survivors but leaders in a new era of galactic cooperation and hope. In the darkest hour, when the future seemed lost, it was the light of courage and unity that shone brightest, proof that even in the vastness of space, the spirit of life could triumph. The new dawn was not just the end of a battle, but the beginning of a story where all beings could find a place and where the greatest strength lay not in weapons but in trust, hope, and the unbreakable will to survive and thrive together.